Hello there. Welcome to Just the Discs. We talk about Blu-rays here, and today we are talking Kino Blu-rays, and, I'm calling it a round of noir. Some of this stuff you could make a case is maybe noir adjacent or crime film, and therefore could be noir adjacent, but I like to try and group the films together in a way that they all sort of fall in the same sort of category, so it doesn't seem so random. And I know we've got a lot of fans in noir that watch the channel and listen to the show, so I figure if I can lump some of these together, you might find something that you wouldn't have through a random group, if you will. But anyway, let's start with one of the wonderful series of Kino Lorber's, the film noir, The Dark Side of Cinema. This is 15, volume 15. And this one features 3 films. I'll take these out so you can see them. We'll start with A Man Afraid. This is from 1957. And this one is directed by Harry Keller and stars George Nader and Phyllis Thaxter. I think they're the major main players that some would recognize in this one. And it is the story of a minister, played by Nader, who his family encounters an incident with a burglar. A guy breaks into their home via their child's room window, and they figure it out, and the assailant attacks his wife and scratches her across the eyes with this rope that he's been carrying. I don't know exactly. He cuts the rope from the swing on the tree outside, and I can't remember if he uses it to get in the window or why he even does it, but it ends up scratching her on the eyes, so she has to have her eyes covered after this. But the bigger thing is that George Nader's character throws a snow globe at his head and smacks him square in the head, and apparently kills him. Maybe not on the spot, but within 3 or 4 hours, this guy's dead. And this is a very tough thing for this character to deal with, and so he's got that to reckon with. And then there's sort of a media circus around it. But on top of that, the guy's father is a younger man. His father runs a tailor shop, and he is villainized in the press. And, despite Nader's wanting to sort of make amends in any way he can, what can you do when you've done something like this? This guy just starts to come after him and his family. So it becomes sort of I don't want to say like a Cape Fear situation, but, it's along those lines, I suppose. And so it's an interesting, premise. And George Nader is an interesting actor who was in some fun noirs. There's one from Kino not too long ago called The Unguarded Moment that I really dug. And he's a police lieutenant in that, but he's in The Female Animal, Phone Call from a Stranger. He's in Robot Monster, he's in lots of movies. But anyway, he's a recognizable face, and he's a sympathetic actor in this performance, and so I think it's an interesting choice. But anyway, so this one includes a commentary by film historian David Del Valle and filmmaker David Dakota, always a wonderful pair and very entertaining pair to listen talk about any film. This is a brand new HD master from a 2K scan of 35mm fine grain, and it is a 2:3:5:1 widescreen noir, which is neat because most of these are going to be 4:3, maybe 1:8:5, but rarely do you see a 2:3:5:1 widescreen noir. So that's kind of a neat function of that one. Then we have The Girl in the Kremlin. The cover says, "Is Stalin still alive?" So Girl in the Kremlin is a brand new master from an 2K scan of 35mm fine grain as well. This is 1:8:5:1. The film stars Zsa Zsa Gabor and Lex Barker, one of many actors who played Tarzan, as well as Jeffrey Stone. And this one, I'll just read the back here. Let's see here. 1953, 4 terrified women prisoners are brought before the Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin, who picks the beautiful Dasha and proceeds to punish her by shaving her long black hair. Moments later, a plastic surgeon leads Stalin into an operating room and transforms his face into something new. So begins the story of the world's greatest conspiracy, The Girl in the Kremlin, a harrowing Cold War noir starring Lex Barker and Zsa Zsa Gabor. When Stalin alters his appearance, fakes his own death, and vanishes, ex-OSS agent Steve Anderson, that's Lex Barker, and Lithuanian refugee Lily Grisenko, that's Gabor, lead the manhunt across Europe, directed by Russell Birdwell, and featuring Maurice Mason from The Creature Walks Among Us in a chilling performance. I should have mentioned that this one, Man Afraid, is shot by Russell Meddy. He's a great cinematographer. Produced by Albert Zugsmith. Oh, that's fascinating. He made some very interesting, what we would consider kind of campy films now, College Confidential, High School Confidential, that sort of thing. So this does sound a little bit outrageous. But Zsa Zsa Gabor and Lex Barker, very intriguing. Never heard of this one at all. As is often the case with these noirs, I haven't heard of these films. Same goes for this last one, The Tattered Dress. Now this one is from 1957, as was The Girl in the Kremlin, as was Man Afraid, all are from 1957. And this one is the story of, I guess, there's a wild night, and after that, wealthy Michael Reston's adulterous wife, Charlene. Now, Michael Reston, I don't know the actor that plays him in this one, comes home with her ripe young body, barely concealed by dress and rags. Murder results. Top defense lawyer J.G. Blaine, whose own marriage exists in name only, arrives in Desert View, Nevada, to find the townsfolk and politically powerful Sheriff Hoak, that's Jack Carson, who's apparently slimy in this, distinctly hostile to the Restons. In due course, Blaine discovers he's been taken for a ride and that the quiet desert communities can be deadly. So there's some kind of conspiracy within this community. Jeff Chandler plays Blaine, which is interesting because he's mostly villainous in noirs, and this seems like more of a good guy role for him. So kind of strange, but definitely intriguing. This one, I do like small town noir, suburban noir. I mean, this is more desert, small town, village kind of noir, but intriguing sounding setup, you know. I forgot to mention on The Girl in the Kremlin, we have a commentary from film historians Emma Westwood and Paul Anthony Nelson. And on this one, we have a commentary from professor and film scholar Jason A. Nye. So they always do right by these. There's always at least a commentary track included with them. And it's really a nice long-running series, these noir sets. So that's the proper noirs from Dark Side of Noir 15. Then we can go into some more recent stuff. Neo-noir if you want. We'll start with Heat from 1986. Now this one is really a gem in my opinion. It's a Burt Reynolds movie, not the Heat from Michael Mann, of course. It's directed by Dick Richards, who did some other films that I'm a fan of. Death Valley, March or Die with Gene Hackman, Farewell My Lovely, one of multiple versions of that. And then like Rafferty and the Gold Dust Twins, which still needs a nice Blu-ray. But anyway, Heat might be my favorite Dick Richards movie. It's got a great opening with Burt Reynolds kind of showing what he does in a scene where he gets in a fight in a bar with this guy and his woman, and he gets beat up. And I'm just going to spoil the opening because I think it's a great setup. So he gets beat up in the bar, and then you find out later the guy paid him to get beat up so that he could look good with the girl he's going out with. But then things get complicated after that. But anyway, he ends up in Vegas, and he is sought out by Peter MacNicol. And Peter MacNicol plays a young guy who... Well, I'm curious how the back actually explains this. Ex-mercenary Nick Escalante isn't a violent man by nature. He's just good at it. And when things get very, very bad, he's naturally at his best. Las Vegas is the backdrop for all the torrid action of Heat, as screen legend Burt Reynolds plays the soft-hearted bodyguard who's out to protect his friends. When a gangster's son brutally beats an old flame, it ignites a tightly wound thriller that pits Burt against the mob and culminates in a vicious cat-and-mouse climax. Written and directed by Hollywood's master craftsman William Goldman. Forgot about that. Of course, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Marathon Man, Misery. Directed by Dick Richards and co-starring Karen Young, Peter McNichol, Neil Barry from O.C. and Stiggs, Howard Hessman, and Diana Scarwood. So that doesn't really explain it, but so there's two plots happening. One is he gets sort of drawn in by Peter McNichol, who's a younger guy with some money who wants to come to Las Vegas and needs a bodyguard so he doesn't get himself in trouble. Burt agrees to do that, so that's one thing, but then he does get approached by an ex-girlfriend who's gotten beaten up by this really awful young mobster's kid, and Burt has a talking to with him. He goes and talks to this guy. He does more than talk to him, and it's a great scene, but of course there are ramifications and consequences from that, and that sort of becomes the engine of the tension of the movie. But there's a few different things happening here. There's a gambling movie happening, there's this noir thing happening, and it's just a really great Burt, like I really love this movie. I think this is great. I'm really psyched this is on Blu-ray finally. Audio commentary by action film historians Brandon Bentley and Mike Leader is included, plus an alternate ending. But this one's a high recommend for me, Heat with Burt Reynolds. Then we have one of the more known in this group here. We have The Big Easy. This one is directed by Jim McBride, who did, I think, a really great remake of Breathless, the French New Wave film. He got his start with a wonderful, mockumentary, if you will, one of the first of its kind, I think, David Holzman's Diary from 1967, which is basically a guy, filming himself on 60 millimeter film as his life falls apart in a comic way, and it's a favorite. I really enjoy it. He also did Great Balls of Fire with Dennis Quaid in 1989, but this is before that. This is 1986. So he does the Breathless remake, then he does Big Easy, then he does Great Balls of Fire and some others. But a very accomplished director and a director that I like quite a bit. This is a Louisiana, New Orleans set noir, police noir about police corruption, and Dennis Quaid plays Remy McSwain, and he's a New Orleans police lieutenant who investigates the murder of a local mobster. His investigation leads him to suspect that fellow members of the police force may be involved, and there's corruption, and it's a really good cast. So Ellen Barkin, obviously on the front here, very sexy cover that I remember the VHS being one that would always draw your eye in the video store days. Ned Beatty is included, John Goodman, Grace Zabriskie, very interesting because there are some Cajun folk that are involved in this whole thing, and Solomon Burke. It's a really solid cast and a solid noir, and I like Dennis Quaid in it. He is kind of chauvinistic, scummy a little bit, but he is charming in this way that is appealing. So anyway, this one I don't think has been on Blu-ray before. It's controlled by Lionsgate, but Kino put it out. So I don't know about the scan. It doesn't say anything here about a new scan. The master does not look brand new, but it looks fine. But yeah, so this includes a commentary with director Jim McBride, moderated by filmmaker Douglas Hosdale, and that's great. A really great commentary track. McBride is just one of those guys who I love to hear him speak about films and filmmaking. Just a dude that I find very compelling. And right out of the gate, he talks about this script having been originally set in Chicago, and that his contribution was to move it to New Orleans, move it to Louisiana. And I think it makes all the difference. This becomes so much more of a specific time and place. And as he says in the commentary, there's so much, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but basically so much character comes out of New Orleans itself, that it really does bring this to another level that it wouldn't be at if it was just Chicago set. And don't get me wrong, I like Chicago set films as well. I'm from the Midwest. But yeah, very solid noir with Dennis Quaid and Ellen Barkin and others. Very nice that Kino's put that one out. Next up, we have Backtrack. Now, this one goes by a couple different titles. It also goes by the title Catch Fire. The directing is credited to Dennis Hopper and Alan Smithee, which leads me to believe there were some issues at some point during the filmmaking, which I'm sure are covered in the commentary here, which this includes a commentary from Alex Cox and actress, screenwriter Todd Davies. This one, I'm just going to read the back here, and then I'll read the cast, which is another big draw. But it's a weird one, for sure, in a very intriguing and memorable way. From iconoclast filmmaker Dennis Hopper, Easy Rider colors the hotspot, comes a tense, sexually charged neo-noir for the 1990s. Stunning Jodie Foster stars as Anne Benton, an artist who sees what she shouldn't, a mob assassination. The police want her to testify. The mob wants her dead, so she goes on the lam, moves to another state, and adopts another identity. But she can't hide from Milo, Dennis Hopper, the mobster sent to kill her. One look at his target, and the hitman has a change of heart. He doesn't want her life. He wants her love. Before long, this unlikely couple is on the run from the cops and the crooks, dodging bullets and trying to sort out who to trust, who to kill, and who to love. The red hot cast includes, now here we go, Dean Stockwell, Vincent Price, John Turturro, Fred Ward, Julie Adams, Tony Sirico, Cy Richardson, Catherine Keener, Charlie Sheen, Alex Cox, Tony Basil, Joe Pesci, and Bob Dylan. And this special edition, this is really cool here, includes both the original theatrical version and the director's cut. So you have the 100-minute theatrical cut and then the 116-minute director's cut. So I assume Hopper would lay claim to the 116-minute cut and not call that an Alan Smithee. But obviously some stuff in that 16 minutes that was cut may have been important to him. But yeah, this movie is kind of crazy. She's a really interesting kind of artist. Like, she does electronic installations that are basically words on digital displays, and they're like, you know, kind of not cliches. They're just sort of her own ideas, provocative ideas in text, and you're just supposed to hang it in your, you know, office or your home, and it's supposed to inspire thought, I guess. So I find that a really intriguing character. I haven't seen a lot like that. But she's very good in it, and the idea that it becomes a, you know, murderer wants to get together with his prey kind of movie is intriguing to me. But yeah, very nutty. Joe Pesci looking kind of strange in this, and he's the one who does the hit that she sees. And anyway, fascinating movie, definitely underseen, and a good fit for this noir bunch for sure. Definitely worth a look, especially if you like a crazy cast and a kind of a crazy movie. So that's Backtrack, aka Catch Fire. Now this one's a little bit of a stretch, but I wanted to bring it in here anyway. So we have Needful Things from 1993. Now this is a 4K, directed by Fraser Clark Heston. And this has quite the cast too. But it also has an interesting feature here. Well, I'll get to that in a second. So I think this had been released by Scorpion, maybe? Or maybe Walt Olson is involved because he knows the filmmaker. I don't know. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So this is a brand new HDR Dolby Vision Master from a 4K scan of the 35mm original camera negative. This, of course, is based on the novel by Stephen King. I buried the lead there. Screenplay by W.D. Richter, who's a favorite of mine. He wrote the script for and directed Buckaroo Banzai, if that gives you any sense of... He's kind of an offbeat dude, and I like his style. Welcome to Castle Rock, Maine, a lovely place to live if you don't mind selling your soul. Acting greats Ed Harris and Max von Sydow had an exceptional cast, including Bonnie Bedelia, J.T. Walsh, and Amanda Plummer in this supernatural thrillers that's dark, haunting, and hell of a good scare. Sheriff Alan Pangborn, that's Ed Harris, has a devil of a problem. Suddenly all the residents of his sleepy little town are dying to kill each other. but at least business is still booming, especially at the new antique store. The shop's mysterious owner, Leland Gaunt, the nerve-shattering von Sydow, has something for everyone, and his prices are always reasonable, just for one small favor. Oh, and of course, Eternal Damnation. Needful Things comes stylishly directed by Fraser C. Heston and scripted by W.D. Richter, who also, I guess, scripted the Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake. From the #1 best-selling novel by the Crown King of Horror, Stephen King, this 2-disc special edition also includes an HD upres of the 191-minute TV cut of the film. So we have a commentary with director Fraser C. Heston, moderated by Scorpion Releasing's Walt Olson. Rest in peace, Walt. And so we have that. That's on the theatrical cut. That's the 4K. And then we also have the Blu-ray, which has that television cut. And that's pretty cool, I gotta say. 191 minutes versus 120 minutes. So you're getting 71 minutes back. Almost a full movie in there back in terms of that. And then on top of that, there's The Devil is in the Details, an interview with screenwriter W.D. Richter. And I've seen him interviewed before. Again, very thoughtful, very interesting guy, like Jim McBride to me. Somebody I like to see interviewed and talk about their process. But yeah, really great cast. And one I haven't seen in a long time, so I'm looking forward to checking this out. But I have heard that the scan is good, and I'm looking forward to watching both cuts for sure. So that's Needful Things. Again, more on the supernatural noir side if I wanted to push it there, but I'm just trying to lump these together, folks. All right, next up, this one is, I think, works, but is more crime related. This is the Anderson tapes from 1971 from the great Sidney Lumet, who I'm a huge, huge fan of. And this is, I think, underseen in his oeuvre, despite an equally interesting cast that includes Sean Connery, Diane Cannon, Martin Balsam, Ralph Meeker, Alan King, Christopher Walken, Dick Anthony Williams, Garrett Morris. It's a really solid group. And the idea is that Sean Connery plays Duke Anderson, and he is just released from 10 years in jail, and he takes up with his old girlfriend, that's Diane Cannon, in her posh apartment block, and then makes plans to rob the entire building. And what he doesn't know is that every move he's making is being recorded on audio and video, although he is not the subject of any surveillance. So there's another thing happening here that's going to get involved. I won't go into, but yeah, I'd never seen a heist robbery movie where somebody tries to rob an entire building, basically going apartment to apartment and robbing them. So it's a really intriguing. Oh, Richard B. Schull is in this. Sorry, I'm a big Richard B. Schull fan. I got to put him in my character actor favorites list. He's a lot of fun. Yeah, so this is just one of those movies. I'm curious, does the back... Let's see here. Make this heist film one of the best of its kind. After 10 years in the cooler, Duke Anderson heads for the luxurious apartment, blah, blah, blah. That's, yeah. He recruits the best burglars in town, including an antiques dealer, that's Martin Balsam, and a young safecracker, that's Walken. I forgot he's the safecracker. That's great. But what he doesn't know is each detail is being recorded by electronic bugs planted throughout the building. Smartly directed by legend Sidney Lumet, from the nationwide bestseller and featuring a memorable musical score by Quincy Jones. Very cool stuff. This has an audio commentary from film historian Glenn Kenny, whom I like very much as a commentator, and I would very much like to hear his take on this movie. But as I said, this one's underseen and underappreciated Connery, and it's just a great cast and an interesting premise, and Lumet. I'm all about getting as much Lumet on Blu-ray as possible. So that is the Anderson tapes. And then lastly, I haven't really gotten into dig into this one yet. This is Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round, and it's directed by Bernard Gerard. That's not a name I'm familiar with, but he did a bunch of other movies that I don't really know. I was just looking at his stuff here. Anyway, I'll read the back of this one because I'm sure it's a little more detailed than this, but this has also got a good cast, at least at the top. Screen icon James Coburn, stars as Eli Koch, a captivating rogue and full-time con man in this comical crime caper, also featuring Aldo Ray and Camilla Sparv. In prison, Koch cleverly seduces an attractive psychologist to win parole. Once out, he immediately goes to work planning a major bank robbery at the Los Angeles International Airport. Okay, I like the pairing of robbing the airport, robbing an apartment building. That was accidental. The logistics of the heist call for, quote, imaginative thinking, so Koch hires an electronics wizard, charms Inger Knutson, that's Sparv, into marriage, and recruits Eddie Hart, Aldo Ray, to work the airport as a disguised cop. Once everything is set, the determined Koch is ready to blast into action, but will his scheme really land him loot that he's looking for, or will his dreams wind up on a dead heat in a merry-go-round? Featuring Nina Wayne, Robert Webber, film debut of Harrison Ford. Did not know that. From 1966. This only has the trailer, so no commentary to get some insights on this one, but I am intrigued by that cast and that idea. More of a caper comedy, but again, noir adjacent, if you will. So anyway, that one sounds fun. Nothing about the scan on here that I can see, but a movie that I've heard of for years but never watched. And I love James Coburn of this period, so definitely going to be worth my time, I think. Anyway, that will do it for this round of Kino Noir and Noir adjacent films. Hopefully there's some stuff in here you haven't seen or that you weren't aware of. Again, big plug for Heat. Definitely my favorite in this whole group, and well worth your time. But this is all a lot of fun stuff. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.